Greetings, fellow Watford fans. Omar Moore here, and as you know by now, Roy Hodgson appointed as Watford's new head coach. That is the news of this day after Claudio Ranieri was sacked on Monday, which really, for most Watford fans, was not a surprise. Pretty much everybody who is of a Watford persuasion saw that coming after the despicable display against Norwich this past Friday. And Ranieri, well, not the best of results over the 14 games he was here, if you include the FA Cup third round game. He lost 11 of the 14 games um, that he was a manager for Watford. 11 games. He got a point against Newcastle a week or two ago, and the two wins were against Everton and Manchester United. So arrivederci to Claudio Ranieri, wishing him well for the future, him and his family. And off he goes. Roy Hodgson's coming in, and this is the thing for me. Roy Hodgson, I am not happy with the appointment, but I do realize that for the short term, um, the one thing we've got to do obviously is stay up in this league. I don't think there's any Watford fan who would say otherwise. I mean, there may be a few that would say, well, why don't we go back down to the championship? But I don't think that's very many people. I think the vast majority of Watford fans want to stay in the Premier League and want this team to thrive in the Premier League. But the way we're going to have to do that is to defend, because we are the only team in English football in the top four divisions of English football that has not kept a clean sheet. As a matter of fact, we've gone 30 Premier League games. If you date back to the previous Premier League season, we were in the top flight. We've gone 30 games without a clean sheet. The last time we had a clean sheet in the Premier League was the 3-0 win against Liverpool on February the 29th, 2020. That's the leap day. That was the leap day of 2020. That's the last time we kept a clean sheet in the Premier League. That was 30 matches ago, 31, the 31st match ago. And since then, it's been 30 Premier League matches with no clean sheets. The record is 34, and that was from West Bromwich Albion, which incidentally was one of the clubs that Roy Hodgson managed. Now, I don't know if it was in 2011 that he was there. I didn't check that, but Roy Hodgson is coming in as the manager. He is going to get defensive first. It's going to be all defense for him and build from there. He's a pragmatic sort. Look, you know of him from the England days when he managed the English national team. Very much a defense first kind of manager, sensible at the back. He will certainly limit the amount of goals that are conceded. But the thing for me, and it's very important, of course, that that happens because we need clean sheets. And without clean sheets, you don't have a chance to stay in the league. So that's a really good thing, even though, again, I'm concerned about Roy Hodgson. And I'll tell you why I am. I'm concerned about Roy Hodgson because I don't think that he is the kind of figure at a club that's going to galvanize, at least in this club, going to galvanize these players, because they are going to be asked to do a lot more defensive work, quite frankly, than they're doing. And with the talent on display at this club, I really wonder, and I'm very concerned about whether these players, knowing that there are some bad eggs in the dressing room, and that's been reported by Adam Leventhal of The Athletic, knowing that there are some players who are upsetting the apple cart, knowing that there are some players who have contributed to a very toxic atmosphere in the Watford dressing room, I wonder just how many of these players are going to get on board with Roy Hodgson. Because the minute they lose a game or two, I just really, I really am shudder to think what the effect's going to be, but I don't think it's going to be good. Now, listen, I am not trying to be a purveyor of doom here. I am not trying to be anything like that. I want Roy Hodgson to succeed as much as I would rather a different manager coming in. I want Roy to succeed. I'll jump on the bandwagon and support the manager. I mean, he's here, he's coming, he's here. So Watford fans should get behind him and back him. I'm going to back him. Hopefully he'll keep us up. If he does, great. If he doesn't, again, the questions will continue to be asked about the board. But I'm not going to sit here and bash Roy Hodgson because although he wouldn't have been my first choice, he definitely has a track record of keeping teams up. He's actually done it on two different occasions. He did it with Crystal Palace a few years back, and he also did it with West Bromwich Albion, actually. And an incredible run in the last, I think, 7 or 8 or 9 games that saw Roy Hodgson's West Brom get out of the relegation mire and stay in the Premier League. So I think that that is the view that the board have taken. They need someone now to absolutely look at the relegation fight and have experience getting out of it. And of all the picks that were available to them, apparently, this is the one that they went with because Roy Hodgson, in that way, has at least some experience with this. They didn't go with Big Sam. I know that's a name that gets thrown around a lot. His name is very frequently come up. But the thing with Big Sam is, although he had been very, very good at keeping teams in the Premier League, he didn't do it with West Brom. Ironically, again, West Brom comes up here. Um, but he did not keep West Brom in the Premier League last season. As you know, they went down. It was the first time that Sam Allardyce has taken a team down into a division below in his managerial career, which has been spanned a long time. Now, Roy Hodgson has been managing for 45 plus years. And I think the good thing about his, again, his approach and his management style is he's pragmatic, he's structured, he will get them having the right defensive mentality. Because if you don't with him, you're not going to play these games. I mean, he is not one to mess around. He's a no nonsense manager. He's somebody who is going to command respect because he, a, obviously is of a certain age, and I think that that does bring some respect. But obviously, Ranieri was of a certain age too, and it seems to me, looking back now, that some of those players did not respect him. I think it's very clear from the final press conference that Ranieri had last Friday when he said that some of the players don't want to follow his philosophy. I mean, that really was revealing. I think by then, when he gave that interview to the BBC that I'm referring to, I'm quoting from, I think there and then he knew he was gone. He probably had a very strong idea that he was going, that was going to be his last match. You can't lose at home, A, to Norwich, who was in the bottom three at the time, and B, to a relegation rival, a team that you're trying to stay away from in the relegation zone, and you end up plopping yourself into the bottom three by losing to that team that you're supposed to stay away from. So that was going to be the last one. I thought he maybe had one more game in him for Burnley, but obviously when you look at the whole way that the Potsos do things with international breaks coming and 2 week breaks, winter breaks, and whatnot, it was going to be time to get rid of Ranieri because 2 weeks to bed these players in with the new manager. Now the question is, will Roy Hodgson light that fire? And that's what I'm concerned about. I'm not high on confidence in that. But again, I'm going to be very optimistic, as I always am, with this team and this football club. And I do think that Roy Hodgson's going to end up getting it done. I mean, I really do think he's going to end up doing it, even though I am very concerned about how these players are going to take to him in the early going and if something goes wrong. And that speaks really to a number of things. One, the leadership on the field. Of course, Sissoko's, I think, a very good captain. He's not the same kind of leader as Troy Deeney. Every captain's different. And those veterans in that clubhouse, what are they doing in terms of dealing with leadership? Because Sissoko's one leader in that clubhouse, but there's got to be others. Tom Cleverley, that's someone I would be looking at. What kind of role does he play? He's kind of a quiet kind of leader, much quieter than Sissoko. You've got Craig Cathcart, who's been the core of Watford pretty much for the last, nearly 10 years now, or however long it's been. Craig Cathcart's been, I think, the longest serving Watford player at the minute that we have. What kind of leadership is he bringing inside that dressing room? These are things I would also look at. I mean, it's not just Roy Hodgson coming in, who is going to try to get this club turned around and get them out ultimately of the relegation mire. You've got to look at what's going on that pitch with these players, because obviously there's some toxicity. There's no question about it. Ja Pedro and Josh King on Friday really having a go at each other on the pitch against Norwich. And that was exposed for the world to see. Some Watford fans like myself think that was actually good that they did, because that means they care enough about this club to fight for it. And when you have players fighting, sometimes that's a good thing. But there are lots of other Watford fans who would disagree and say, well, this is not what we really want to see. We don't want to see Watford players, disunited on the pitch. arguing with each other, that is not a good look for the club. So you can take either one of those views or another view. But the fact of the matter is that the key is not only Roy Hodgson, but how these players are going to take to him and these bad eggs in the clubhouse. Now, Roy Hodgson does not stand for nonsense. There's one thing about him. He may seem like a very tame person, but he is not somebody who suffers fools gladly. And I think once these bad eggs are identified, I think he'll put a stop to it. I think he absolutely will. If it, because I think he will get some respect that Ranieri did not. So I mean, there's some things about that appointment that I can understand why the board did it. Ray Lewington obviously is expected to come in as well as Roy Hodgson's assistant. I think he is going to be the assistant at Watford, and that would be a really nice welcome back for Ray Lewington. He was the manager of this club in the 1990s for a spell, and he was really well liked by Watford fans. And Ray Lewington is a beloved figure at Watford in all respects, and he was a really decent person. He really cared about the club and did some good things while he was here as manager. And so it will be nice to see him back at the Vic. It's just great to know that he is going to be in the fold back at the Vic again after many years away. So Ray Lewington, who has been an assistant with Roy Hodgson on and off or for a number of years, certainly at Crystal Palace, where Roy Hodgson last managed, but also I think in England too, he might have been an assistant there, if I'm not mistaken, at one point or another. But the fact of the matter is, Ray Lewington coming in as well, very likely to at least as the assistant head coach, his right hand man, Roy Hodgson's right hand man. This is going to be a very interesting managerial move. I know again, um, my whole thing with the board is if you are going to go for somebody who had some experience in the Premier League after you fired Cisco, why didn't you go to Roy Hodgson first? And obviously we can all speculate about, well, it's because Ranieri is a friend to the Pozzos, and they've got a 30-40 year friendship, at least 25-year friendship. And so the Pozzos have wanted Ranieri to manage one of their clubs before, and now this is an opportunity, and he said so be it. But we can't get to a point where you're just handing the reins over to a friend of yours. I know Ranieri has done some good things as a manager, but we can't have that at the expense of whether this club stays up in the Premier League or not. Surely, can we? I mean, I don't know. I don't know that that's the best thing. Sometimes, again, friendships with football and business are very tricky, and we saw this with Filippo Giraldi, the technical director at one point at Watford, and he was a close friend of Gino Pozzo's, and many of the fans at the time said that Giraldi had to go, but he stayed on for a bit, and then finally, Gino Pozzo said, told him goodbye and waved him goodbye, and then he went. So these friendship things at the expense possibly of a club staying in the Premier League. I'm not. I don't fancy that too much to have that happen. I'd rather them go for a manager who, boom, has that opportunity to just boom go in there and get the job done. But I know this is not how it goes in this line of work or many others. I get it. So as far as I can see, look, again, I'd much rather another appointment. I am concerned about whether or not Roy Hodgson is going to be the one who motivates this team to perform better on the pitch. I know they're going to be pragmatic. That's the good news about the appointment. I know they're going to defend better. That's the better news about the appointment. But what I am concerned about is the dynamic nature of the team. Is it going to be implemented on the pitch? Are these lads going to move the ball faster? Are these players going to connect on the field better with each other? Are these players going to pass the ball better up the field? Because that's the thing. And we've got now what, less than a week until the closing of the January transfer window. What kind of players now will the board bring in to back Roy Hodgson? That's the question, because Samuel Carlu was supposed to be coming in at Watford when Ranieri was here, and Ranieri wanted him to come in. Now, is that going to change under Roy Hodgson? We'll see what happens these next 6 or so days. It's going to be very, very interesting to watch the transfer market these remaining few days of the transfer window And of course, as I said, next Monday we're going to see the window shut. So we'll see whether or not Watford bring in more players. I think they're going to bring in more players now. I don't know how many they'll get. They'll probably only get another two players or so. But I think they're going to be more reinforcements, and I think it's going to lean more defensively. Defense and midfield. Probably in the midfield, I think they need maybe one more person. They've not been playing Dan Gosling. Tufan has not worked out. I know he's at Africa Cup of Nations. He had been. Tufan has not worked out so far for Watford, at least in the early going. He has not been impressive. Lauza, when he comes back from the African Cup of Nations, is obviously going to be a consideration as well. But look, the bottom line is now, I think Watford need maybe one more midfielder because we still lack that kind of verve in midfield, that drive and that verve to make that ball move quicker and to get that ball distributed better. We've got Kayembe in, who I think has done a very good job, but I think there needs to be one more piece going forward to complement Tom Cleverley, or drop Tom Cleverley back and then move someone in. So Sissoko is just fine. I think Kuchka should be on the bench. As far as I'm concerned, under Roy Hodgson, I'm not so sure that Roy Hodgson would fancy Kuchka, but I could be wrong. I could be wrong. We'll see what Roy does. Roy of the Rovers, you've heard of Roy of the Rovers. Now it's Roy of the Hornets. Roy Hodgson is your new head coach at Watford Football Club.